So welcome everybody, welcome to Just Festival and to this very special event brought to you by the Bulgarian Cultural and Educational Centre Scotland under the title Provinciality in the Global Village of World Literature, ? Which is probably the most important thing, yeah? So my name is Eilís Ní Dhuibhne, and I'm one of the three curators of today's event, but also, well, alongside Daniela Dimitar and Tudora Radeva. Not only for today's event, but also another Just Festival event, which is an outdoor installation called Hidden Letters, and which is the reason we are here, that inspired the topics of our discussion today. So now a few words about Just Festival, also on behalf of the festival director, Helen True. Just Festival is Edinburgh's human rights and interfaith festival within the framework of the Edinburgh International Fringe Festival. And through its program, each year, Just Festival brings together artists and scholars and poets like we have today, performers, speakers with audiences to discuss key issues we are facing as a society. But this year Just Festival celebrates its 21st birthday with a very special live and online program. And this is one of the online events I'm particularly looking forward to. And the Just Festival partner for today's event, the Bulgarian Cultural and Educational Centre Scotland, was established in 2017, not long ago. The centre is the only independent and non-profit, non-venue-based organisation of its kind in Scotland. And it curates and produces, but also amplifies cultural events. And crucially, it runs an educational program all year round, which feature Bulgarian-born or those from Bulgarian heritage, creatives of such descent, who are often Scotland-based. Yeah. Ranging from the likes of the theatre maker and visual artist Katerina Radeva to the 14 poets, contemporary Bulgarian writers as part of the Hidden Letters project, which Stefan Ivanov is one of them and one of the presenters today. So just before welcoming Stefan and his fellow presenters, a few words about the Hidden Letters project. So hidden in plain sight in the secret garden in gardens of Edinburgh's St. John's Church, which is home to Just Festival. Hidden Letters is comprised of 6 brightly colored park benches, but these park benches are designed in the shape of letters from the Cyrillic alphabet, which have got no graphic equivalent, no graphic analog in the Roman or the Greek scripts. So these 6 out of 14 altogether, such letters, are in particular, and they sound like, you have to go there to see them, sound like B, J, C, Ch, St, and E. So they're also 14 specially commissioned poems by as many contemporary Bulgarian writers that are attached, including Stefan is one of them. So these 14 poems are attached to each letter bench and are presented in their original Cyrillic script, but also in English translation. So the Hidden Letters benches are designed by Kirill Zlatkov and Stefan Ivanov, but the project itself was the brainchild of Tudora Radeva, who has joined us today as well, and who also runs the Reading Sofia Foundation. So it first launched in Sofia in Bulgaria in 2018, and it has since toured to Berlin, to Paris, to Budapest, to Plovdiv, Rabat, and currently it's in Brussels and soon in Münster. So Edinburgh is the first UK destination for the project, but also the first time any of these letter benches were fabricated outside of Sofia or Rabat, for this matter. So hence locally in Edinburgh. And we need to give a shout out to our fabricators, Sandy Law, Spas Yanev, and Daniel Penev. So our curatorial intention from the start, when we started with Daniela and Tudoro, ever since amidst the global pandemic and Brexit, but with the vital support of the Scottish Government's Recovery Fund for Cultural Organisations in Venues through Creative Scotland. So our intention was to encourage the audiences to reclaim the outdoor public spaces for poetry and multicultural activities, multiculturalism, as well as for reconsidering the role of small cultures such as Bulgaria or Scotland or Ireland within Europe. So ever since the Just Festival launch on 6th of August, just a week ago, we know that our festival visitors are seeking and finding the hidden letters, as well as turning this quiet urban oasis of Edinburgh with the best views to the ancient Castle Rock and the Edinburgh Castle into a kind of new outdoor public space for reading and thinking, for resting and for meeting friends and family. And I would like now to welcome our presenters from Scotland, from Ireland and Bulgaria. Jim Mackintosh, you're giving us away. Eilís Ní Dhuibhne, yeah. And Stefan Ivanov, all the way from the Rhodope Mount, is the top of Bulgaria there. So welcome also to Dimitar Kambourov, who will facilitate the conversation and introduce the presenters in more detail, but I'll introduce him. So Dimitri is an associate professor of literary theory at Sofia University and lecturer of Bulgarian studies at Trinity College, Dublin. He's the author, translator, and co-editor of numerous books, including, I will just mention, the Bulgarian poetic classics, Men in the Global World, Pro-Art, and most recently, the significant volume, Bulgarian Literature as World Literature, published by Bloomsbury in November, oh, here it is, yes, in Bloomsbury in November 2020, which sparked today's discussion. So just before handing it over to Dimitar, just a few notes on housekeeping. Today's event is a webinar, which means that you won't be able to hear or see the rest of the audience. And but nevertheless, we do very much would like you to comment or pose questions to our panel. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will spot the Q&A button. So click this if you'd like to post your question and comment, and we'll respond to them as we go along. Please note that the event is being recorded, and if you want to comment, you may do so anonymously if you prefer. There is also a live transcript. So as you can see, it does say live transcript at the bottom of your menu. So click those if you need this access. And at this point, I'll just mention that I'll disappear and come back possibly towards the end of our discussion. I'll pop into the chat about 15 minutes to spare to do a time check. And that will be probably your last chance to ask any further questions. So welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us today. Dimitar, over to you then.
Thank you so much, Iliana. Thank you, everybody. And hi again, my co-speakers. I am really very grateful, and I feel honored to be invited in this circle of friends and colleagues and established writers and poets. And for me, it is of great importance that we have this conversation in the framework of Jazz Festival and French Festival. And also the way this conversation is connected with the already mentioned and described project, Hidden Letters, gives us a very nice opportunity to talk about poetry, but to talk also about the way we see ourselves on the map of contemporary map of world literature and beyond. And I'll start with just a very brief remark about the already mentioned Bulgarian literature's world literature. It has been made by Michael Harper and me. We are collectors, and we edited this book for Bloomsbury. But the point that really somehow made the connection with the topic that I presented or offered to the organizers of this event, to the curators, we've had a very important, very crucial introduction by Maria Todorova and conclusion by Galin Tikhanov. They both come from Bulgaria, and they're both established international scholars. One is one of the greatest historians of the Balkans. Her book, Imagining the Balkans, is a must for everybody who is dealing with this region. And Galin Tikhanov is, so to speak, one of the greatest historians of literary theory of today, and also a very important voice in world literature, in theoreticizing the world literature of today. So, our texts were, so to speak, between these very, very powerful voices, Maria Todorova and Galin Tikhanov. And what was very interestingly common in both in these two texts was their observation about the kind of defensiveness of our writing. Defensiveness with regard to our kind of long non-recognition. It is well known that Bulgaria is not only famous for being unknown, we could say that it is actually famous about because of the fact that it is so unnoticed, the fact that it was so neglected throughout the years. So in their view, and that was something that really they shared very persistently, the fact of this defensiveness could be read in many of our texts. And I would say that, of course, they never mentioned anything like this, but they imply that our texts actually betray this feature of provinciality because of this defensiveness, because of this kind of pride, and also a kind of hidden shame that Maria Todorova addressed in the beginning of her famous book. She mentioned, just to remind you, that she wants to, after this book, people coming from the Balkans somehow to talk about their Balkanness without pride and shame. So this is something that somehow gave me this idea to address the issue about not exactly provinciality. I would rather put it differently, about periphery, about being marginal, about coming from these liminal spaces that are on the brim, on the border territories, the liminal territories between centers and some other territories beyond. So the interesting perspective for me is somehow to see what writers coming from such countries like, for example, Scotland, Ireland, Bulgaria, could do in order to play out or to outplay their origin, their peripheral, marginal country of origin, or whether this is something that still matters, whether this is something that we could consider still important. Isn't it provincial, as I put it, to talk about provinciality in this world, in this global literature, global village of world literature? So for me, that was the initial, the starting point. And just one more remark with regard to this, why I would be a little bit afraid to put it initially. And I'm very grateful to Ileana and to the other curators that they chose actually this much more provocative title to this talk. provinciality is, as we well know, is always relational. It has to do with not that belonging to the provinces, it's rather seeing yourself from an imaginary center as belonging to the provinces, or it is being seen from a self-proclaimed center as belonging to the provinces. So from that point of view, it's always a question of colonizing and self-colonizing, imaginary self-colonization or colonization, of course. And it is, from that point of view, it always implies this mild negative feature, a shortcoming typical for an individual, a group, a community, a nation, a region, even a continent could be considered provincial, that is considered peripheral, marginal, liminal, decentered. And it always implies a condescending, lofty, patronizing, always dismissive under the mask of forgiving, understanding attitude. So from this point of view, the implied mild negativity of provincialism is something that we always have to keep in mind when we discuss such a vague and at the same time always an ambiguous, strangely an ambiguous term as provinciality appears to be. And from this, and here it is the moment in which I'll stop with my initial remarks, and I want to introduce our valuable speakers of today. And I'll start with Eilís Ní Dhuibhne, who is an established Irish writer, of course. She has started creative writing at Dublin University. Remind me the exact name. Sorry, you're with switched off. Yeah, I have to find my remarks.
UCD.
Yeah, UCD, of course, University College Dublin. She also just recently edited the book Look, It's a Woman Writer, and it was, yes, wonderful. And her own book of short stories that has been called with title Little Red and Other Stories. Actually, I have translated the collection of Eilís short stories recently in 2019 to Bulgarian, and I have to add maybe that the issue of Hiberno English, the issue of this English that is with that is reflexive with regard to the fact that it is an English that is kind of tilted, moved slightly away from a kind of a norm of a center, is something that she addresses in a number of her short stories. But also the fact is that Eilís started learning Bulgarian, and I had the honor and the happiness to be her teacher at Trinity College Dublin, which is another very, very interesting choice to do a minor language, being so active in teaching both in English but also in Irish, this version of Gaelic languages that is called Irish language. So from this point of view, we have someone who is very aware of the difficulties, challenges, and also the possible blisses of being outside or on the margin in the limit. And I'm moving to Jim Mackintosh, who also established his literary presence in English, but who also writes in Scots, and who is also very persistent in associating his name and his literature with Perthshire. He's actually a current, how do you pronounce it? Maker or maker? Yes. Maker, good. Of the Federation of Writers Scotland, and also Maker of Catalan Eco Museum in Perthshire, Scotland. And recently he was the poet of resident for St. Johnston Football Club, which is something incredible, very, very interesting, known as the Saints. He's obviously a fan of this club. And he's an author of 6 poetry collections, an editor of 3 anthologies, the most recent of which, Beyond the Sulky, celebrates the centenary of Orcadian poet George Mackay Brown. He is also, as I said, he's connected with Perthshire, but he mentioned Charles Bukowski as a source of influence, and he likes reading poetry aloud. And here's the connection with Stefan Ivanov, who also translated Charles Bukowski into Bulgarian. One of his books is called Ginsberg Against Bukowski in the Audience, and who also likes reading aloud. And in effect, twice the audience awarded him 2nd place at Sofia Poetics. And in 2011, he won this prize, actually. His poetic style is diary-like, confessional, and yet often out of the blue political and socially engaged. And he mingles a number of discursive networks in which the contemporary eye seem to be caught yet only partially expressed through these networks. And being an erudite himself, he, in my view, does a lot to repeat the gesture of his great predecessor, Geo Milev, a modernist who proposed barbarization of Bulgarian poetry, only in a somewhat postmodern, polydiscursive manner. So from time to time, he genuinely shocks me with the outright sincerity of his poetic idiom, with his alternative marginal claim for authority. So these are our 3 presenters, and without further ado, I want to give them the floor, because I don't want to give any further kind of slant or perspective of this conversation. And let us start with Eilís, our participant from Ireland. Hello,
okay.
Eilís.
Thank you very much, Dimitar and Illy, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. It's really great to be in the Edinburgh Fringe. So I just have a few thoughts about provinciality and marginality and global literature in the context mainly of Ireland and of Irish writing. So I think in Ireland I agree totally with Dimitar that this provinciality periphery thing is relational, and I wonder if anyone really considers himself naturally to be provincial. I think it's other people who make you feel provincial. That's a view from the outside. I mean, traditionally in Ireland, you know, there's a song that we sing at when people are drunk at parties, a 19th century song. When boyhood's fire was in my blood, I read of ancient freemen for Greece and Rome who bravely stood, 300 men and 3 men. And then I prayed I yet might see our fetters rent in twain, and Ireland long a province be a nation once again. So I think we equated becoming independent with shaking off our provinciality, because we were a province from the point of view of people in London, and probably maybe, yeah, still are. But by the time I was growing up, we had no sense of ourselves as provincial. And I think especially if you're in a capital city like Dublin, you believe you're at the center of things. And I think this sense of being central and important extends to literature in Ireland, and is created by literature to some extent. A couple of days ago, I was discussing, had a discussion about our early experiences of literature with some writers from Belfast in the north of Ireland, Northern Ireland, which probably would be defined by anybody as a province, because a little bit of the UK on the island of Ireland. They had the same kind of they were writers, and when they were young, they studied English literature in the university, which I did as well. But they went to Queen's University in Belfast, very good university. We're talking about the early 70s. They said not only were almost all the professors and lecturers in the English department in Queen's came from England. And they studied English literature from Beowulf to Virginia Woolf with no works by Irish writers on the syllabus, which I find really hard to believe. There was one junior lecturer from the north of Ireland, Seamus Heaney, starting off, and they spoke glowingly of him. But one of them said, Seamus was very strange because he was Irish. he was, you know, an Irishman among all these Englishmen, and they were all men, but which was the point of my discussion with them. But in fact, I realized quickly, yeah, in Belfast, there were other issues to be dealt with before they even got on to the feminist question. In Dublin, at the same time, it was quite different. We had, of course, a chair of Anglo-Irish literature, Irish literature and English in University College Dublin, and I'd say in Trinity even at that time. I think so, I'm not quite sure. And we read Irish writers in English, James Joyce obviously being very prominent, Beckett, Yeats, and so on. And we regarded literature in Irish literature in English as truly significant. I think I would have thought of Yeats and Joyce. I would have thought of Yeats in the same breath as William Wordsworth. I mean, we didn't think they were as important as Shakespeare probably, but we certainly thought they were as important as George Eliot or Charles Dickens or Milton or most of the English writers. We had no sense of literature written here as being less significant. That's in the context. We're still talking about English literature, of course, but I think we also thought of English literature as world literature. So a kind of blinkered view of things. Since Joyce wrote exclusively about Dublin, the whole city was kind of felt hallowed. It wasn't just a real city, but also a literary city with all the places, the streets, the pubs, the river. I mean, the really ordinary and not particularly beautiful River Liffey has kind of got this sacred status because Joyce wrote about it so much in Finnegan's Wake and in Antony's other work, and even his short stories. You know, the collection is called Dubliners. So I think Joyce has had an enormous impact on the way Irish writers perceive themselves. So we do not think of ourselves as provincial, which does not mean that we're not provincial. I think, but it is a matter of perception, and I don't think we feel particularly peripheral. It's in Bulgarian literature as world literature, the wonderful book that Dimitar has recently edited. Maria Todorova, as I think you said in the introduction, writes, the concept here of world literature in the book seemed to me to stand firmly on the implicit pillars of circulation beyond the country of origin, reception, and recognition, all with market-based bearings. So I think what she's saying is that a lot of the contributors to the book think about world literature as literature which is sold widely throughout the world. And it seems to me that that's a pretty normal way of looking at it, you know, and that it certainly is one aspect of it. So I'm going to just look at two novels, two Irish novels, one which very quickly has made it into global status and international status, and another which seems to me to be an equally good novel, which never made it even in Ireland. And it's just but it's interesting to compare these two novels. So a novel that's written by an Irish writer, published in London and New York, which always seem to go together, reviewed in the English and American papers, as well as the Irish ones, has from the start a better chance of going global than one which is published here and doesn't go further. And I think Sally Rooney's novels are the latest example of how an Irish writer can become global in hardly any time at all. It just goes international. And I think the portal for Sally Rooney was Faber, the prestigious London publisher, who also published Seamus Heaney's first books, which I think is kind of an interesting thing. Does this novel have special qualities? Yes, I think Sally Rooney's novels are, as well as having made it globally in the marketplace, are universal in their themes. She's writing about in Normal People and in Conversations with Friends about love affairs, love going wrong, career ambitions, relationships. But that's what nearly every novel is writing about. And she does it very well. I mean, I think to go global, you do have to be good, but you can be good, universal and global in your themes and not go anywhere. So there are these two aspects to this question. Recently, I've been obsessed with a novel written in Irish called Tontila, which means something like tidal wave, something like that, by a writer called Seamus O'Neill. Written in Irish, our first language, our original language, published in 1947, reprinted once in 1974. It's very like Conversations with Friends or Normal People in that it's about normal people like us, who, I mean, people who are not murderers, drug dealers, suicides, criminals, a group of people who have been dealt with quite a lot in literature by Sally Rooney's contemporaries. But in Tontila, it's the story of the first couple of years of a marriage that's a little bit rocky. So, it's an unhappy family story. He works in an insurance office. He has high literary ambitions. He writes plays in his spare time, so on. Very ordinary. It's set during the war in the emergency, and the backdrop, but it is a backdrop, is Ireland during the World War, and it's a fantastic portrait of Dublin and Ireland at that time. But that novel, although it's really good, just got nowhere at all. I mean, it's not even read by people studying Irish language literature in the universities. Irish language enthusiasts didn't like it for various reasons. It wasn't Irish enough, it was too urban. The language was not rich enough, although it's very lyrical, but it's not, he doesn't write in the dialect of a fisherman in 1840 in the west of Ireland, which was kind of what you were expected to do at that time. And some people, when I've asked them, said it didn't do well because we didn't like the author. And you think, who was apparently a little bit crusty. And you think, I don't think I would have liked to have coffee with James Joyce, particularly. I don't kind of dismiss his book for that reason. Anyway, it seems to me that both, say, Sally Rooney's novels and Seamus O'Neill's novels are global in the sense that they have global themes. But as far as global marketing is concerned, there's just absolutely no comparison. So does any of that matter? I think this is one of the questions you asked in your original little email to us, Dimitar. Well, apart from the financial rewards for writers and their families and heirs, in the case of those who make it onto the canon like Joyce, I don't think it matters very much. But a problem with not getting known outside your own little patches, that you can remain inaccessible to people outside your own language and country, so that readers don't get to ever read good novels. And, you know, I'm thinking about that in connection with some Bulgarian literature. As Dimitar knows, I've been very enthusiastic about Emilian Stanev's novella, The Thief of Peaches, which I read during the summer at some point. Also a bit like Tontila, like an unhappy marriage set during a war and so on. But actually, I think it's a brilliant novella. I really love it, but hardly anybody knows about that book here in Ireland. And I went through the catalogues of libraries to see, is it even in the country? And actually Trinity College has it, yeah, and some other works by Emilian Stanev. I mean, they have their Department of Slavonic Languages where Dimitar lectures, but I think they had the book even before that. But that was the only copy I could see in a catalogue in Ireland. The British Library has it, of course. Yeah, so I think one problem with not being global in the market sense is that you don't reach people. But I wonder if in our changing global world with the internet, and if you find out about something now, you can get it. I mean, you can order a book in Bulgaria and it will be posted to you in Dublin in a way that was not really easy or probably even possible until relatively recently. And maybe the big marketplace is kind of losing some of its power. You know, the way now we're kind of interested in Ireland and the UK and other countries in local, you know, we want local vegetables and we prefer little independent bookshops to the big ones, and even the small independent publishers are respected more, I think, than they used to be. And I think there's a certain resistance to mass marketing that maybe that would be useful for literature as well. You can find out about things from, you know, your Facebook friends and who say, I love Emilian Stanev, and then somebody else will find the book somewhere. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eilís. I was wondering whether this Seamus book was translated into English?
No.
No. So yeah, this is the, so to speak, the first missing piece, so to speak, for it.
Yes, that's the first
to become
missing piece.
international, yeah. And that's actually the very remarkable difference between your and Jim's situation compared to my and Stefan's situation with regard to literature and world literature and this question of marginality and periphery, because this is a particular chance, so to speak, an important first step that so many Bulgarian books, poetic and fictional books, could not make, just be translated. So that the initial
translated to English is the first step, and then you can move on to other languages. Yeah.
But yeah, it is. So, what is your explanation for the fact that this book was not translated into English?
Well,
because
hardly any Irish books are translated.
Okay, really? So there is an attitude.
I think the Irish language writers, well, I can't generalize too much. Maybe don't even care about that. You know, I mean, Seamus O'Neill was in English. He was bilingual, but English was his first language. In fact, he was a graduate of Queen's University. He was born up there. He could have written the book in English, but
so that was a statement that he wrote it in Irish, obviously.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. He was a Gaeilgeoir, and most Irish language writers are, and there have been some Irish language writers, including our the most famous ones, who have actually refused to be translated to English. They don't mind being translated to French or Bulgarian or any other language.
But, so could you compare your situation with these two books? I mean, because you both you write in both languages. So could you say that there is a fundamental difference between the books that you write in English and those that you write in Irish?
Well, there is a big difference between them as it happens, yeah, because when I write in Irish, I think also I write for an Irish, well, obviously for Irish language readers. And there's always, when you write in Irish, there's a sense of doing it for a cause, which I think is actually very dangerous for writers. But since I write in English as well, that doesn't have an impact on me as a writer in general, but I think there is a sense when you're writing in Irish that you're doing it for the sake of the Irish language, to preserve the Irish language. And when Seamus O'Neill was writing in the 1940s, it would have been probably with some kind of hope fading, I would think already then, but still that Irish would be revived as the language of the country, that there was that, yeah. So that's no longer an aspiration, but it is an aspiration to keep Irish, to keep it alive. All right, and that writing is one way of it's nationalist in that sense. Yeah. Cultural linguistic nationalism. And I prescribe to that too, because I write I've mostly written in English, but about halfway through my career, I suppose, I began to write in Irish, and I really realized then I'd always felt a little bit guilty about not doing enough for the Irish language.
Okay. Let's see what Jim would say about the same problem, or the same kind of cluster of problems, because it's not one problem at all. So Jim, the floor is yours, please.
Well, I'll probably just follow on from Eilís there. I had written some notes and I've completely changed them all based on what she's just said. I don't want to sound particularly defensive or in some way aggressive either, but I think we all, to a certain extent, right now are speaking a foreign language. I mean, my mother tongue is Scots, so I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I think, and to go back to this kind of perception of provinciality in the global village, and I see the global village as possibly the internet now. I think, to follow on from what Eilís was saying there. But we use English as a common platform for business and economy and all the rest of it. But I don't think it should ever be seen as the creative norm, or used to reinforce a sort of, can I use it, cultural or creative oppression almost. I'm not a province. None of us are. Certainly my language is not provincial. I'm speaking English because that's the platform we're all using. But none of our languages are provincial, and we shouldn't really ever allow them to be so. I mean, Scots is a language. In Scotland, there is English, which is used in business, and it's used in commerce, and it's used in schools. There's Scots Gaelic, which is much more to the fore than Scots itself. Scots, even now, suffers from abuse. Anybody using Scots online, there's a huge amount of examples right now of young artists, sadly, particularly female artists, who get a hard time online because they use Scots. And I think that's been used as a vehicle for something more sinister than the fact they're using Scots language. But Scots has been around for 1,000 years, and it is not drawn from English. It is its own language. So you've got from my mother in school in the 1930s being taken to the headmaster's office and beaten, and there's many, many examples of that, being beaten for speaking Scots in the classroom. So there is a kind of certain amount of aggressive response to that we're making sure it is still acceptable. It's interesting that we're actually part of the Fringe. The Fringe Festival, I'm not going to give you a complete history lesson here, but the International Fringe Festival, the biggest, most dynamic, wide, sometimes crazy and mad, actually, far too big and for its own good. Hopefully there's been a kind of resetting of that this year. Started its life actually in 1951 as part of the Edinburgh Folk Festival, the People's Festival, which was created and nurtured by a gentleman called Hamish Henderson. And I'm not sure if he's known very well to many people here, but that's him there as a young man. So that's me as a young man. I did an anthology of poetry in tribute to Hamish 2 years ago to celebrate the centenary of his birth. But Hamish created in 1951 in Edinburgh a festival which was about celebrating culture and creativity from Scotland, because the International Festival, which he was a great supporter of, then had nothing whatsoever to do with anybody who was born or creating any art or music or poetry or whatever in Scotland. And Hamish was very, very keen to look at, and I can quote from here to say, we should have no fear of contamination. Let art forms cross-fertilize, have fusions, crossovers, because the well is there. And I think that transfers and translates to every one of us here, and no matter where we come from. I think it's important that we cross-fertilize ideas, and I think, Dimitar, you were saying what matters, and Eilís, you picked up on it as well. What does matter for me is events like this, the recordings of this, the connections made anew, that might be a slow burn, that might be next year, it might never be, but there'll be little bits of connections and bouncing of ideas. And for me as a poet, every moment, every experience of that is an idea, is a new adventure. And that should be placed and added within a larger imaginative and creative context, and to be shared and embraced and challenged anew. It's interesting you talked about language there. There's a couple of things I would add. One of the great poets in Scotland who's not particularly well known outside Scotland is a guy called William Souter, and he was born and brought up in Perth. Sadly, he suffered an illness which made him bedridden, and he basically sat in bed or lay in bed for 13 years. All his bones started to fuse together, and that's William Souter there, into a room. And interesting to pick up on what Eilís was saying there, that Souter would write in English and Scots, and when he wrote in English, it was what he considered more serious subjects. So if he was talking about war, or he would write his war experiences, he would write in English. But if he was being more kind of romantic or having a wee bit of rant, as we would say, if he was challenging things, he would write more lyrically, as he felt it, in Scots. But he's never heard of very much more, other because he, the very first collection of his poetry was edited by Hugh McDermott, and there was nobody more important in the world than Hugh McDermott, according to Hugh McDermott. And he made sure very much that Souter was brought down a wee level. Hence you had, and I go full circle, of course, to the long-term flightings, as we call them, very public spat that took place between Hamish Henderson and Hugh McDermott. And that really was mostly to do with Hugh McDermott's ego. Don't get me wrong, Hugh McDermott was an absolute wonderful genius of a poet, but he was a bit of a flawed genius as well. And I think Scotland, if I could, I'll probably just finish off here. I'm conscious of time, but Hamish Henderson had a wonderful piece of poetry when he talks about the carrying stream. And the Carrying Stream Festival still exists in Edinburgh. Hopefully you'll be back this year. And I'm part of a thing called the Hamish Matters Festival up in Bulgarian Persia. And Hamish would say, tomorrow songs will flow free again and new voices be born on the carrying stream. And I think that's an entirely relevant little piece of poetry, no matter whether that was in Scots, Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, Bulgarian. And I think I'll just finish by saying the project I'm about to embark on is to translate the works of Pino Merio, who was a friend of Hamish Henderson's, still is, he lives in Rome. And I'm away to translate that from Italian, not into English, but into Scots, because it deserves to be heard in Scots.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jim. And because the time is so much running and we are pressed with it, so I'll be transferring the word, the floor to Stefan now from the roundups. So Stefan, our perception is maybe slightly a little bit different, maybe not that much as Jim tried to show us. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, okay. Can you hear me right now?
Yes, very well.
Okay. So I'll try to be brief because of the time. So when I first was invited, and thanks for the invitation, and I'm so happy to be here. I mean, here with you on the screen, because here is a very interesting place to be. Right now, between Scotland, Ireland, Sofia, and here, Bulgaria. And I began
Sofia and Bulgaria is a good point.
Yeah, and the Rhodope Mountains, because yeah, Sofia and Bulgaria are different things in Bulgaria. Yeah. and when I began thinking about the theme of this conversation, I remember that one of the most interesting long reads, I mean articles that I read recently, was one concerning the Brazilianization of the world. And this article began with one of my favorite quotes attributed to J.G. Ballard. The periphery, the province, the margins is where the future reveals itself. And in a way, Bulgaria, yeah, it's somewhere in the periphery, in the province, in the margins. And to give you some context, because I really like to be precise and concrete, even when I write poetry and literature and articles, scientific even, in the humanitarian studies, in the cultural studies too. Bulgaria right now is the poorest, most corrupt, and recently, and very importantly, the least vaccinated country in the European Union. This is to give you a brief context, not of the literary, but of the concrete situation in Bulgaria. And when I was thinking about what can I tell you about the province and concerning Bulgarian literature, there is a little short book, not so short, not so little, but very important, written by Eilís Ní Dhuibhne, the province of men. Eilís Ní Dhuibhne, as you know, is a Nobel laureate, and he was born in Ruse. But I'm not going to talk about this book either, because Eilís Ní Dhuibhne is not considered really a Bulgarian writer. He's a world writer. And what am I going to tell you about the province? Because province, right now, if we think about it, the world of words is a world that is in the periphery right now. The visual is in the center. And when I'm thinking about words in Bulgaria, and the province and periphery, I really want to share with you that almost everything that is interesting and successful and curious and inventive in Bulgarian literature and words, even though strongly marginalized, is a personal effort by the authors. And maybe, I don't know if there is a literature in Europe, not only in the European Union, that has so little institutional support, a very humiliating institutional support. Here in the periphery in Bulgaria, there is a lack of funding, a big lack of funding, a really humiliating lack of funding. And I mean a giant lack. I'm going to hit on it again and again, because it's really perverse. You can't imagine how do writers, poets, humanitarians, whatever, you name it, people in the academia just survive. I mean, I'm not in this situation because I work in the theater. I'm a playwright, I'm a poet, I'm a journalist, I have a PhD in philosophy. I can do lots of things, whatever, with words. I can earn my living with words in many ways, but not so many of my colleagues have this chance. And here in the periphery in Bulgaria, there is also a big lack of solidarity. There are no adequate working modern art and cultural unions. Again, the personal effort. This is the most important thing. If you want to be translated in English, you must be very, very, very adventurous and a self-made writer, if I may say so. Because the institutions are not going to help you. I mean, there is a national center for the books and the literature, but it was established a couple of years ago, a little before the COVID crisis. And also here in the periphery, with the lack of meaningful cultural policies and strategies, there is a lot, not a lack, but a lot of arrogance, aggression, self-hate, and nihilism, and shame. Yes, shame. And also, to underline it again, corruption and poverty. And the cultural field is not a field that you can steal a lot from, so it's not supported. For example, for the last couple of years, I mean, really couple of years, 3 years, not a single movie has been funded by the National Film Center. Who knows why? I mean, I know why, but it's a long story. And concerning the small literature and the small languages, to make it simple, to simplify it a little bit, everything that can do to boost things in this field in Bulgaria and to make it better, even though it's not so hard to find the know-hows and I don't know, for dummies or whatever, how to make things better. Everything, it's totally undone. It's not done in Bulgaria. It's very perverse. It's really, you can't imagine. When I talk to playwrights or poets or writers, they really don't believe me. I know writers from the US, I mean, even in Palestine, the situation is a little bit better, which is impressive. It's very strange. And this week, I finished rereading Madame Bovary, because I'm in the countryside, in the mountains. And you know, the subtitle of the book is Provincial Manners. And you know, the book is a masterpiece, full of pity and humor, and envy and misunderstanding, and a very big desire to be somewhere else and to be someone else, to be somebody else. And but it's really not a tragic book for me. It's really funny and full of pity and empathy and compassion. But it's really cruel to be in the situation that Emma is in. But she tries to change the situation with her heart, with her hope, with her naivete, with everything. But hey, that was her province and her failure, and she tried to fail more beautifully, to have really hopes of failing beautifully, and not even to fail beautifully, but to imagine things that and the life that could be there for her, but she even couldn't be content with anything in it. And concerning my life, because my writing and my living here and in the periphery, in the province, is a little bit complex, and it's going to be even more complex when so many people here are not vaccinated, and we still don't have a government. We had 3 elections this year, 3 or 4, or no, we're going to have a third, I think. And we live in here in this permanent crisis. And you know what? Almost nobody from the literary world, or from the art world, or from the theater world, they don't talk about this, because we're in a very, very, very bad situation in Bulgaria. And I don't know, people they just don't talk about these things. I mean, there is this shame, or this tunnel vision that they're in. They just don't want to see it, and it's really strange for me to I don't know, to live right now, right here, and to say and write things that so little of my colleagues are writing and talking about. Origin of the world, and the origin of the word idiot is somebody that is not in his right place. But when I'm talking the things that I think that they're important, because every day I see people that are suffering from the situation right now in Bulgaria, and I can feel their pain. And it's a shame not to talk about the things that cause so much pain, because they're changeable. They're not written in stone. They're not carved in stone. Politics and cultural politics and health politics and educational politics and policies, they're changeable, and we must talk about them. And this is one of the things that here in the periphery, in the province, in the margins, I try to talk about a lot, and to write a lot, and to try to write a lot about them. Because for me, personally, it's a shame not to do that. And basically, this is it. We're 5 minutes over time. And basically, this was everything that I wanted to say briefly. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. While you're talking, I found this very beautiful, this combination between Madame Bovary and Beckett's failing better. Failing better. So this kind of self-improvement of failing. And also, that I have to admit also that I recognized in your words this self-perception of many Bulgarians that we really love to complain. Not that we don't have good reasons for this, but this is a kind of strange thing about Bulgarian character, that we are so much complaining, and also that we perceive our lives, despite all these complaints, and maybe because of them, as relatively, well, maybe not happy, but serving us well. So I was expecting somehow you to come to this the flip point, the point of change of the attitude, and somehow to come to a little bit more optimistic note. But,
I'd like to say that I'm not complaining. I'd like really to say that I'm not complaining. I'm really angry. And I'm really working to change this situation that I'm talking about. I'm not complaining. This is a totally different thing.
Yeah, okay. Good. So since we really ran out of time, I don't know. It's Ileana to decide whether you could.
Well, I think I was supposed to pop in 15 minutes before, but I never mentioned that we were granted another 15 minutes. So we can run over for up to 1:15. So we can definitely close the conversation and at least pick up from the Q&A this grateful note. It was addressed to Jim. Thank you, Jim, but I would extend it to all the speakers. Definitely, thank you for all of your comments. But possibly to give you one last chance to perhaps give us a quick reading of some of your poems, if you'd like to. I mean, in particular, Stefan, who is represented in the Hidden Letters project, with a very short poem dedicated to the letter O. So I wonder whether that could, and then for you, Jim and Eilís, to perhaps follow suit with a very brief performance of any of your poems of choice. So I don't know whether Dimitar would allow me to do that, because I'm breaking the original intention of the conversation there.
No, it's great. It's great. If I have this clear feeling that it will be a good ending point of our discussion. So, Stefan, do you have in mind? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Please go.
I found the poem, the letter E. I was asked to read it in Bulgarian because Jim explained why very beautifully. And I totally agree with him. I really love to hear poems in their native language, especially Polish. Sorry for that. Буквата Е. Има букви, с които започват шепа думи. Напомнят оплашено дете. Седи въгъла на масата. Азбуката го е поканила на семейна вечеря. То не знае, че ще е основното ястие. Ще съставлява чужди сърца и върхове. И няма да има време, дори за последно възклицание, преди канибалското поглъщане. Има държави, които правят същото с хората. So this is it. A very short poem.
Are you going to read it in English now? Or?
Yeah, I can try, yeah. The letter E. There are letters. A handful of words begin with. They resemble a frightened child sitting at the table's corner. The alphabet has invited him to a family dinner. He doesn't know he's going to be the main course and make up strangers' hearts and summits, and there will be no time for a last exclamation, even before the cannibalistic engorgement. Some countries do the same to people.
Okay, just a very brief, short remark about this poem. So it's very much an epitome of the beauty and the difficulty and the challenge of this project, because of course, the letter E doesn't exist, doesn't have a correspondence neither in Latin nor in Greek alphabet. And because of this, it is one of the most difficult sounds for all my students who are studying Bulgarian, who are learning Bulgarian. But what is important here for this poem is that these two very important words, verhove and srca, that include the letter E, they cannot be translated in a way to make sense in this situation. So it is very much like implanting a kind of difference, a kind of strangeness, an otherness that cannot be transferred into English. So it is very much the importance of this translation is very much to demonstrate the impossibility of this translation and any translation in general. So, and this is something that I like about this project. It's on the surface it looks like, oh, everything is translatable. We have this 6 or 14 letters or 12 letters with their strange benches letters and the fantastic poetry that is attached to it. But the project implies also this other thing, this level of intranslatability, this level of impossibility, so to speak, to transfer what it has come on the first place in this original language. So yeah, it's something very, for me, it is important that this the hidden aspect of this project is also about this some levels of impossibility, some level of preserved otherness within the translations. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the story about the letters and their essence and where they come from and so on, but I'll leave it for a text or something, so I'll not take more of the time. And Eilís and Jim, do you want to present us with some of your stuff, Eilís? Sorry? I'm not hearing you, Eilís, because of the microphone.
Yeah.
Eilís,
now you can hear me now. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I hadn't. I'll read something very briefly. And actually, I just found here as I was a little poem called Igahar Eilís Ní Dhuibhne. So it's in Irish. So you'll hear some Irish. And the title says, "In a city in the center of Europe." I think I wrote it in Ljubljana, and it's really a kind of paean to the variousness and beauty of Europe from a city which is very central. Clog an temple ag bula Eilís an lei, Eilís na carfach gloite seo Eilís Ní Dhuibhne. Misha ag ihe ag cafe a muffin spare, Tarhi agus uachta roite, mil agus fian os na fermucha, Dina ag sudar habroad, Coracle so Germanish, Frankish, Sulanish, Idolish, agus Changa na Slav. So I'll just leave it there. It's just a little description of sitting in a cafe, listening to bells ringing and hearing from people going by, some words in German, in French, in Swedish, in Italian, and in the language of the Slavs. So.
Thank you, Eilís. Jim, and will you take the last word?
The last words. Well, here's a poem called Cyrill Sooth in Scots. I won't do a translation after it will run out of time, but essentially it's about global warming, I think, which would be a good one to finish off on. So it's a bit of a rant, but here we go. Tidings of seasons stop it fu effect and spirit, spite and water thrown o'er their bricht endeavours, to soothe their kittle days with tunes of golden merit, rocht with chitters, hunkert doon with drookit feathers. And whiles they chirp and chat the mossy bark o' siller birks, and holly circling the childless days, we ignore their joyful ballads with our fizzled spark, and a perilous trait of bending Mother Nature's ways. Yon global warming, poking the swell of the bourgeoisie, layering the fat with blinding greed to toast with glee the burning branch of the last of the mahogany. Ane of the sharpest truths whilst we a' drap and dee. Let the lichty show up my words afore it's hour late, whilst the warnings in their song, fearful notes of truth fugged in our lugs o' ignorance, the comfiest state o' our wealthy parts, nae sense in yon endless sooth. We need a michty shack for your contented wander, afore the birds depart and the songbook floats awa, on tides of forests drowned by our muckle squander. What is our worth if we dinna seize this golden opportunity?
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for your presence, for your words, for your wisdom, and for your sincerity. And I I'll be happy if Ileana says something for.
Yeah, just a big thank you on behalf of Just Festival and on behalf of the Bulgarian Cultural and Educational Centre in Scotland. And also to possibly plug in the next Just Festival event, which is related to the hidden letters, which is a similar kind of project on online discussion, but this time really getting deeper into the questions that, you know, whether it's global warming or the things you all mentioned, whether there is time for a new approach to poetry, politics, and economics. So we have a political scientist in the mix with two poets, one from Bulgaria, and there's the Radulova, who is the letterer in our hidden letters, and Alec Finlay, who is a Scottish born and bred author, but who has a history of exhibiting and working also with in Bulgaria, most recently in Plovdiv as well. So that's
another connection to Hamish Henderson is Alec Finlay. Yes,
exactly. So there it is. It is a natural kind of continuation of our discussion. Please do join us, and hopefully we'll get a chance even to hear Dimitar's remarks about the aspect of the Hidden Letters project that he couldn't possibly make them today. But thank you ever so much again on behalf of Just Festival and the Bulgarian Cultural and Educational Centre in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
And bye-bye.
Bye.